Welcome to Thursday's Look North. In tonight's headlines, the tainted blood scandal. The family of a haemophiliac who was infected with HIV say the Department of Health should not lead the inquiry. Now, in the 1970s and 80s, people with haemophilia were offered a revolutionary new treatment to make their blood clot. Factor VIII was made from blood supplies and given to thousands in this country. The problem is some of that blood was infected with fatal illnesses such as HIV and hepatitis, which led to the death of more than 2,000 people. Well, last month the government announced there would be an inquiry into the scandal, but families of victims and campaigners say it must not be led by the Department of Health. Well, Mark McAlinden's been to meet the still grieving family of one man who contracted HIV and died 26 years ago.
John Cowen, a father and husband from Carlisle, was just 36 when he died in 1991. A haemophiliac, he'd used the revolutionary treatment Factor VIII, which helped his blood to clot. But in 1984, he was told he'd contracted HIV.
It's as raw now, it's probably worse now. Maybe a mixture of being sad and anger as well. Because I was never really angry, but I'm getting angry now. I think the anger's going to overtake the sadness and the rawness of it and, keep us going to find out what happened and why.
It was difficult to know at the time, but John was one of thousands affected. Contaminated blood meant 1,200 people contracted HIV, around 900 died. Around 5,000 people were infected with hepatitis C, roughly 1,500 died. The 6 political leaders who called on the government to start an inquiry called it one of the country's worst peacetime disasters.
I want them to admit that they did this wrong thing. Surely they must have known that if you're buying blood in from America, it's not going to be absolutely pure, is it? When drug addicts and, people in dire circumstances were selling their blood.
Last month, the government announced an inquiry would be held. But campaigners and families of victims, including Nina and Doreen, are angry that it will be overseen by the Department of Health. They say it should be independent.
We need a statutory inquiry. They're marking their own homework, really, aren't they? They're, the judge, jury, the lot, all rolled into one if they run this inquiry.
Today, Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, called on Theresa May, the Prime Minister, to, in his words, rescue the inquiry by placing it under the control of a different government department. That way, he says, families can have trust when they seek answers to questions such as who was responsible and were warnings about contaminated blood ignored. In a statement, the Department of Health said, "We are determined to make sure the voices of victims and their families are heard as part of this inquiry." Mark McAlinden, BBC Look North, Carlisle.